The radical left has taken over the Democratic Party.
Hello and welcome to Think Progressively, covering politics and all the other chaos life has to offer. This is episode 82, recorded on Friday, February 17th from Milwaukee. I'm Joe.
And I'm Jason.
And on today's episode, we discuss the white supremacist coup you probably haven't heard about yet. But first, the headlines.
Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
Let's talk Super Bowl. How'd you feel about it, Jason? Did you watch it?
It was a good game. I did watch it. I didn't care who won. Out of the Chiefs and the Eagles, they've both won one recently. I don't care for either team particularly. I don't really hate either team particularly.
Well, unlike you, Heathen, I did my liberal duty and I boycotted the Super Bowl, all right? And I went to go see a musical instead. I didn't totally buy musical tickets and not realize it was actually at the exact same time.
Wow, we got such good seats. I don't understand.
No kidding. So actually, I did not see the Super Bowl, but I saw all the stuff about it. I guess go Chiefs. I don't know. I hate the Eagles fan base so much that I just don't care.
I mean, they killed Hitchbot in Philadelphia, so they are garbage people.
Well, let's talk about one of the things in the Super Bowl. The commercials.
Yay. What was your favorite commercial, Joe? You didn't watch it.
I saw some of the commercials. I enjoyed the, oh God, what was the name? It was the John Travolta and...
The Grease one?
Yeah.
Of course you did.
With the script. Shut up. I like Donald Faison and I like Zach Braff, so leave me alone. That was good. I liked the M&M's one just because of the story behind it.
I knew that was coming.
I mean, it was really dumb.
The clam flavored M&M's. Right. Not a big fan of that campaign. They just copied the Mr. Peanut thing.
Sure.
My favorite was the Breaking Bad.
Oh my God, you're right. No, yeah. I changed my mind. That was the best one. I freaking and then they got Tuco in it.
Yeah, he was the best part of it too. Tight.
Yeah. You're right. No, you're right. 100%. That was the winner. I completely forgot about that one. I lost my mind when I saw that. The Adam Driver one was weird.
Mm-hmm. The Matrix-esque.
It's a website that makes websites.
Yeah. So what was your least favorite commercial?
Well, is it stereotypical if I say the one about Jesus?
I'm teeing it up for you. We got to talk about it here eventually. It's in the script.
I don't want to be such a douchebag. Like, oh, it's the one about Jesus, man. But it was. There were a couple of ads, and you may have actually seen them before the Super Bowl. There was a huge campaign right now called the He Gets Us campaign. And it's about how Jesus is a woke, liberal, leftist, socialist.
Which is actually more accurate than the conservative traditional view of Jesus.
And they finished it off with a couple of ads during the Super Bowl as well. And for those of you who may not know, there's actually a very weird, dark history behind these exact campaign ads. So let's first talk about how a bunch of conservatives all hated these commercials because of how woke they are.
You guys, Jesus would kneel for the national anthem. Well, everything is woke.
If they didn't make woke. Jesus so woke, man. And I'm like,
it was Marxist a couple of years ago. Now it's all woke.
Yep, literally. But then it all culminated into one final commercial, which was the Love Your Enemies video, which we'll talk about in a second. And it pissed everyone off. The left, the right, everybody. And I guess us too, because we hated Jesus, I guess.
I remember the first one. I think I zoned out after that. I don't remember any of the other Jesus ads.
That's okay. Don't worry about it. So, quote from AOC from the left. Something tells me Jesus would not spend millions of dollars on Super Bowl ads to make fascism look benign. That is a pretty hefty claim. Also, keep in mind that these ads themselves were also $20 million. So they spent $20 million on Jesus. But then on the other end, Charlie Kirk, our favorite little love potato who loves Nazis, I guess. I'm not really good with the insults today. I'm really sorry. He said that the adverts pandered to liberals and said it was one of the worst services to Christianity in the modern era, and that people behind it would be woke tricksters.
Sure. I don't care. Panders to liberals, not like Jesus, the conservative.
So, but let's talk about the real thing. Now, we can talk about that crappy surface level stuff all day long. I want to talk about the history behind these ads so you guys are aware of what's actually getting done behind the scenes. There was a number of articles that were posted about these ads right before the Super Bowl actually happened. And a lot of it had to deal with the donors and where a lot of this funding came from. Because again, this is a huge campaign just for Jesus. And while most of the donors behind the campaign choose to remain anonymous, like this is literally what the campaign says on their website, we do know that one of them is David Green, the billionaire, hyper-conservative, extremely homophobic Christian founder of Hobby Lobby.
Criminal,
who literally stole artifacts from the Middle East. He confirmed in November that he was one of the main donors behind the campaign with the initial budget of around $100 million. Now, the campaign itself is run by the Servant Foundation, which plans to spend over $1 billion over the next 3 years on this one marketing campaign. And while the Servant Foundation does say it's promoting, quote, biblical generosity.
you could do a lot more with $1 billion to promote biblical generosity that doesn't involve an ad campaign. Hey, maybe all these people just need to hear about this Jesus guy. And here in America, you never get enough Jesus. No one ever talks about him. You know, the average person on the street, you walk up and you're like, hey, have you ever heard of this guy named Jesus? They'll just look at you with a blank stare.
Who are you talking about?
Yep. That's why you need to spend $1 billion on an ad campaign.
Is that one guy from the Avengers? No, it's DC. Actually, technically, it's BC.
Oh, come on.
But I digress. Reports show, and I'll include that in the show notes for you guys to look at later, that the Servant Foundation donated over $50 million to a literal SPLC-listed hate group, the Alliance Defending Freedom. If you don't know about the Alliance Defending Freedom, if you've seen any story about court battles over like LGBTQ rights, abortion access, or religious discrimination, the ADF is usually the group representing the bad guys in every single one of those cases.
Good Christians.
The goodest of Christians. Masterpiece Cake Shop, I believe the Brainsburg Cross scenario, destroying separation of church and state, the stupid liar coach. Remember that story we had, Jason? ADF helped him as well. And again, it all culminated around this one ad called the Love Your Enemies video campaign thing, whatever. And it's a really simplistic ad. It shows the couple of black and white pictures of a bunch of people screaming at each other. It starts with a black man screaming in the face of a calm officer in riot gear. And if you want to talk about biases and agendas, this is all you kind of need to know about. And then it goes to a woman with a, quote, liberty over lockdown sign screaming at a doctor in a mask.
They're the same thing, Joe. Yeah. Fighting for your civil rights is the same thing as fighting to not have to wear a mask during a global pandemic.
Everyone has their opinions, all right? Eventually, the screen cuts to a Jesus love the people we hate and a link to Love Your Enemies website, which has a bunch of other bullcrap we don't need to worry about. And it's just a bunch of garbage, dude. The fact that you have so many people who are trying to normalize absolutely insane positions with Black Lives Matter protesters. I mean, you said it. The idea that equivocated doctors with crazy nut jobs and said we should love all those people. No, absolutely not.
Jesus would love the Nazis. I do remember thinking that, watching that. I think that was the first commercial, wasn't it?
I don't remember.
But that's what I remember. They're like, love your enemies like Jesus. No, that's always been bad advice.
So be very skeptical when watching any of these. If anyone shares them, you should probably let them know that it's literally just dark conservative money trying to push Jesus on a bunch of people to normalize absolutely bad conservative behavior. That's all it is at the end of the day.
And is it going to work? I think they're just wasting their money. Like, is really people are going to see these ads and go, that's what I want to go to. I want to go to a religious website to be preached at.
Right.
No one is going to, anybody that would be into that, they're already in your cult.
Well, and I looked at the website too, and it's just nothing but stupid platitudes. It's just, the cultural conflict really loves that. This is really good for all rating stuff, but it's not good for loving each other. We need to do what's best, and that's what Jesus comes in. And we need to make sure that we love everyone like Jesus loves all of us. I'm like, shut up. It's just stupid nonsense. So overall, it's just really dumb. But the fact that there is dark money being poured in this, and it's millions and millions of dollars by crazy right-wing conservatives to push this stupid agenda, just driving me insane.
People who refuse to pay for healthcare for their own workers, but yet they've got $1 billion to spend on this.
Yep, literally.
No birth control pills for anyone who works at our stores because it offends our religious sensibilities. But here are some quotes from Jesus that we cherry picked.
In other news, Donald Trump has his first official opponent, besides Joe Biden, I guess technically. Nikki Haley has officially launched her campaign for president in the most boring template of a presidential announcement way I could ever imagine.
She was also the U.S. ambassador to the UN under Donald Trump.
Right. So with her slogan of "We're ready," she really hit hard on the age difference. I'm not sure how much you actually saw of this, Jason.
I did see most.
Okay, cool. I did put a couple of quotes here, though. Quote, "We're ready to move past the stale ideas and faded names of the past, and we're more than ready for a new generation to lead us into the future. And it's not that America has passed our prime, it's that our politicians have passed theirs."
Yeah, well, she can't. There's no place for her, right? Like, there's she doesn't have any message that separates her from Trump.
No, not
because she's 100% on board with him. So what else can she say other than, I have the exact same policy, but I'm younger?
Well, and the one thing she did try to push for were like term limits and like an aptitude test for everyone running for president who was like over 75 years old.
Completely unconstitutional.
Well, of course it is.
There's no way that would ever pass.
But she was asked about that test and whether she thinks Donald Trump would be able to pass that test. And she just immediately said, well, of course he would pass the test. He's a great person. He knows he's totally fine. He's very competent at the job.
Very stable genius.
Right.
Woman, TV, whatever that was.
And my whole thing was when she said that, then what's the point of you?
Right.
If you are so worried about a new generation, but then also say, oh, by the way, this old generation is actually perfectly competent to be president, then what are you talking about?
One of them is, and Joe Biden isn't. This basically, I mean,
but
that's
has
what
to
she's
beat
saying.
Trump anyway.
And isn't Ron DeSantis younger than her?
Yes, like by 10 years.
So, yeah. If that's all you're running on, I don't see it. Maybe she's gunning for the Trump VP. Yeah.
Maybe. What a sad sight.
Yeah, it was very boring. And I mean, the other thing is, when you're trying to pander so hard to racists and you're not white, it's going to be a problem. Her real name is Nimrata, too, which is...
wow. I actually didn't know that.
Yep. Her Nikki is her middle name.
Oh, God. Go run as Nimrata, Haley. Come on. Go for it.
Right, the person that says that she never experienced racism growing up. Oh, how come you don't go by your given name?
We all know. We do not speak that name.
So, yeah, I don't think she has any chance of becoming the Republican nominee, but maybe she wants to be Trump's VP candidate. So we'll see. I don't think we'll be talking much about her campaign.
Go get him, Nikki.
After this. Next up, let's do a story. It's been ongoing for a couple weeks. We haven't covered it up until now because we're part of the conspiracy. The train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. Despite everyone claiming that it's being covered up by the media, I'm sure most, if not all of our listener is aware of this story. But in case you're not, the accident began shortly before 9 p.m. on February 3rd, so 2 weeks ago, when a Norfolk Southern train left the tracks while traveling from Madison, Illinois, copying us, to Conway, Pennsylvania. A total of 38 cars derailed and a fire ensued, damaging another 12 cars, according to the National Transportation and Safety Board.
Okay.
There were 20 cars carrying hazardous materials, 11 of which derailed.
That's not good.
They originally had evacuated people close to the derailment because they found there was multiple cars carrying vinyl chloride, which was spilling out of the cars, and they feared an explosion. So one of the things they did was actually do a burn of the vinyl chloride. And
I didn't know that.
Yes, so the huge fireball, there's pictures, video, gigantic fireball, looks like a bomb went off, and this huge plume of smoke to basically, if there would have been an explosion, it would have scattered those chemicals across a much larger area. So they really did do what they should have done.
Oh my God, I'm looking at pictures.
Yes, with the controlled burn. So they did burn, release, a lot of these chemicals into the air, obviously caused a lot of problems. 2 days later, they evacuated a much larger section of the city. A lot of fish, thousands of fish died as the chemicals made their way into waterways. There are reports of other animals dying that really aren't confirmed. And I think, we tend to get get a little bit into conspiracy territory when you go that route. But I want to talk about more of the mechanics of what happened and how it could have been prevented.
Sure.
The NTSB, the National Transportation Safety Board's investigation isn't complete yet, but early signs suggest that a faulty wheel bearing on one rail car probably caused the derailment. There's video of the car like 20 miles like up the track from where it ended up derailing with sparks and fire coming out underneath one of the cars, and that was probably the bearing overheating and causing that fire. At a news conference Tuesday, Ohio Governor Mike DeWine told reporters he was informed that the train, prior to its derailment, had not been considered a high hazardous material train, so the state was not notified that it was passing through. His quote, "Frankly, if this is true, this is absurd, and we need to look at this. Congress needs to take a look at how these things are handled. We should know when we have trains carrying hazardous materials that are going through the state of Ohio." That's a Republican pushing for government regulations on private business. Glad Governor DeWine could see the light on that.
Well, when it affects him, that's when.
Well, right, when people are yelling. I mean, if you look at some of the quotes that he's had in the past on government regulation, he's not a fan. He calls it red tape and the same conservative talking points you hear about. Government always gets in the way of business. So that's why we don't do things like make them fill out manifests whenever they're carrying hazardous materials. We set very, very low bars for all of these things to be regulated. And that's what Republicans are constantly pushing for. Such as, during former President Barack Obama's administration, the Department of Transportation enacted a rule requiring high-hazard cargo trains to be equipped with electronically controlled pneumatic brakes by 2023. So it would have been done this year.
Okay.
Allowing them to brake faster. Okay. Currently, trains use technology that was developed in like the 1850s.
Well, that's not great.
To brake. So it's very difficult for them to brake, especially larger, heavier trains. The Trump administration repealed this rule.
Of course.
Citing government reports that found that the cost of requiring these kinds of brakes was not economically justified.
Awesome.
The rail companies need to make their profits. Screw safety. Who cares if these trains derail? It's not going to affect anybody anyway.
Wasn't there like a whole book that was written about this thing? I feel like John Galt was involved and the heroes went to some island.
Lived happily ever after.
Right.
The pushback to this, which is true, is even if this safety rule had been in effect, it would not have applied to the Norfolk Southern train because it was not categorized as a high hazard cargo train. Like, that's the gotcha.
Sure.
Instead of, because we needed more regulation. We needed it to be a stricter rule, to have more trains do this, not none.
Right.
Which is what we ended up doing, is saying, well, nobody gets to it. And yes, in criticism, Joe Biden should have reinstituted this. Definitely, it would have pushed it obviously beyond 2023 because he didn't take office until 2021, and there's no way they would have been able to comply with it by then. But still, it should have been done. Not, because it wouldn't have applied in this specific case, we just shouldn't do anything. We should just keep it the way it is. I will not let Joe Biden completely off the hook, or really at all off the hook on this one, because again, not only has he not reinstated the Obama era rule and then also tightened it up as he should do. If you remember, on December 2nd of last year, he signed legislation to block a national U.S. railroad strike.
And we talked about that.
Quote at the time from President Biden, "It was tough for me, but it was the right thing to do at the moment. Save jobs, to protect millions of working families from harm and disruption, like having to evacuate their city, and to keep supply chains stable around the holidays." Adding, the deal avoided an economic catastrophe. We don't worry about the environmental and medical catastrophe that we caused, but
the economy.
The economic catastrophe is what really matters. In the past 2 decades, operating profit margins nearly tripled for the major carriers, the 4 leading freight companies, CSX, KC Southern, Norfolk Southern, that we're talking about in this instance, and Union Pacific. In the past 2 decades, their operating profit margins nearly tripled, while the percentage of revenue they spent on labor sunk by double digits.
Oh, great.
In 2001, those 4 carriers spent about $8.7 billion on compensation and benefits, and generated $25.6 billion in revenue. In 2021, the company spent 10% more on labor, but brought in nearly double the amount of revenue. So they are reducing their labor costs while increasing their profits, which leads to
Capitalism.
less staffing, more strain on the workforces.
Oh, yeah, capitalism.
Yeah, exactly. The way it works.
This really does sound like that same book. Where's Ayn Rand when you need her?
The biggest contribution to this change can be traced back to executive Hunter Harrison, who just sounds like a villain, who pioneered what's commonly referred to as precision scheduling, a business model based in part on longer trains and fewer workers.
What a concept.
And you'll probably be shocked to learn that there are around 1,000 train derailments in the United States every year.
I actually had no idea about that.
So over 4 a day. You're hearing more about them now because it's being reported. But yes, and I even saw, I think it was Ted Cruz, saying that this is Joe Biden's fault because he passed a $1 trillion infrastructure bill, and the rail lines are still not safe, even though this was a private rail car.
Jesus
it wasn't the tracks but also, how fast do you think you can rebuild the rail lines?
Hey, if I remember my history correctly, and I'm pretty good at my history, all right, I think when the Green New Deal happened, that happened what? It took like 2 weeks?
Right. The Green New Deal was passed, and it was...
and if I remember correctly, that was in like 1800s time, so...
Yeah. We're just ignoring who was president for the 4 years prior and did absolutely nothing.
Because he's a hack. Of course. Now, what I really want to know is, and I saw that Tucker Carlson was talking about this a lot, what's the cover-up conspiracy going on? I watched a little bit of your video that you linked, and we'll link that in the show notes as well. But I didn't really dive too much into the conspiracy. Is it just because like Biden's administration is just trying to hide it because...
Not so much. It's a much more wide-ranging conspiracy than that. Yes, we'll link...
trying to kill Ohio?
Right. Like, we'll link
that's
a video...
not a conspiracy. We're just literally trying to kill Ohio. That's just out in the open, man. Don't we all want that? No? The silence is deafening.
I'm trying to talk. We'll link a video from Rebecca Watson, from formerly of the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast, where she talks about all of it's mostly like medical conspiracies and people distrusting science when it comes to this spill. But one conspiracy is, the media's not covering this anywhere. Just do a search for it. You'll find literally every major news outlet, every major newspaper, TV stations, everywhere talking about this. It's not difficult to find. I don't know how you can possibly say it's not being talked about. It wasn't huge news right when it first happened, beyond some of the images and video that was, as Joe found out, pretty shocking. But again, there's 1,000 train derailments every year. You don't hear about them generally. Also, there's some like, where's FEMA? How come they're not coming in? Well, the governor of Ohio has to declare a national emergency for the FEMA to be able to come in, and that has not happened in this case. But there's also a lot of the effects of this. There are a lot of talk about like chickens dying or cows dying, things like that, which are just not substantiated. I mean, I'm sure they'll be investigated. Maybe there is some causal link, but there's nothing that's been verified beyond what I talked about with the fish, which is a big deal. And this company should be made to be financially responsible. Not only they should have to pay a huge fine just because this happened in the first place, they should have to pay for all of the cleanup and everything that's being done to mitigate the effects of this. They should have to pay for everyone's medical bills. They should have to pay huge fines to the DNR, to the EPA. There should be a lot of accountability that will probably not happen. And all things, again, that Republican governor 3 weeks ago would not have supported. How often are they trying to gut the DNR and the EPA constantly? But yes, there should be a lot of accountability. But you do get into some really unhealthy conspiracies when, people talk about what the impacts are, that, the government is trying to kill us because they're telling us we can go back to our homes.
Sure.
And while I understand, I would be hesitant as well. Like, the fumes are still there. I'm sure you can still smell it. It's perfectly reasonable to wonder if it is safe. And I don't want to spend, again, I don't want to get into all of the conspiracy stuff. I don't want to spend spend a lot of time on that. I'm not an expert. I would say, we have the video there. Watch the video. Rebecca does a wonderful job in going through a lot of these claims and that this type of spill has happened previously in a different area, and the town survived. Not everyone dropped dead after a month.
Sure.
That part of things, I think we can kind of calm down a little bit on and not go crazy with the conspiracies.
They're coming for our cows, man. They're coming for the cows.
But yes, accountability. The rail lines, they make billions of dollars in profits. Norfolk Southern is one of the 4 largest freight carriers in the country. They have the money.
Well, and you have some numbers down here I'm not really too happy about.
Right. So initially, Norfolk Southern was planning a $25,000 donation to the community. It's
$25,000.
Yeah, that's where you might have heard there was some reports of them planning to give every resident $5. And it wasn't like they weren't gonna give $5 checks. They were gonna donate $25,000 to the community, which is insulting.
Sure, yeah, I'd be pissed.
Norfolk Southern has now said that they will give $1,000 to each resident in the zip code this happened, 44413, which would be $7.2 million. About better, but still not anywhere near what they should be made. We should start at about $100 million, and then start adding all of the other stuff that I just talked about, the medical bills, the cleanup, the fines to all the different agencies.
Yeah, it sucks when you destroy a community.
Yeah, you should have to pay, or their insurance company, I guess, should be writing a very, very large check. But we'll see if they get held accountable. I mean, it just doesn't happen. When these kinds of accidents happen, it's all of the people of that community that have to pay for it.
Yes, and we'll continue paying for it. That's the other problem, right? Is that we keep talking about all the damage that's being done, and I'm glad you're talking about the lasting damage, because that's what usually is avoided from the conversation, is the lasting damage. And I'm talking like generational damage that will be done to communities like this because of the ineptitude and the overall negligence by companies like this.
Right. But when it comes time to make the profits, and again, these rail lines are running through public land.
Right.
Through land that the freight companies don't own. That's our resources, our land that they are using to make billions and billions and billions of dollars. And we don't even do so much as hold them accountable when something like this happens. And that's one of the biggest problems we have in this country. And anytime you talk about it, the conservatives just scream socialism, Marxism, communism at you. And that's the end of the conversation. And that's why we need strong leadership, someone more aggressive than a Joe Biden, someone who's going to hold these companies accountable.
Or, you just hear me out, it's a cover-up by the deep state cabal.
Right. And this was all part of their plan. It's Operation Jade Helm all over again. But speaking of
deep state cabal,
strong politicians.
Sorry, I didn't know what connection you were going to make.
Yeah. Iron-willed politicians. Let's talk about Dianne Feinstein. Dianne Feinstein is a senator from California who has been a senator for 31 years. She's been in politics for 50 years.
Isn't she in her 90s now?
She is. I think she's 89 and she will be 90 this year.
Oh.
And she has kind of announced that she's going to retire at the end of her current term. This is the seat that currently we have Adam Schiff and Katie Porter, our favorite candidate, running for.
You're not a fan of Shifty Schiff?
Not compared to Katie Porter, no.
Yeah,
Dianne Feinstein,
89 years old. There you go. It's in the article.
Is a very moderate Democrat as well, in a very safe district in California too. So it definitely would love to see someone much more progressive a Katie Porter take her seat.
No kidding. My goodness. Well, and especially on top of that, all the reports about how she is just nearly senile or delusional right now. She's just completely incapable of doing the most basic of things, holding conversations, and they're literally propping her up like Weekend at Bernie's at this point.
Well, funny you should say that, because on Tuesday, it was announced that she would be retiring at the end of her term, and a reporter asked her if she had any message for her Senate colleagues after her statement was issued by her office. And she asked the reporter what he was talking about.
Oh, no. Oh, Diane.
She said, well, I haven't made that decision. I haven't released anything. Quickly, a staff member interrupted her and said, Senator, we put out your statements. And she responded, you put out the statements? And then turned back to the reporter, I should have known they put it out. Yeah, you probably should have known that your staff was going to announce your retirement. So that's what we're talking about. And I don't like to make fun of it, as I've talked about previously. My dad, who is passed away now, had dementia, went through a long process with that and dealt with it for years. So I'm not in any way trying to make light of her condition, but my dad was also not a senator.
I was just going to say, at least your dad wasn't leading the country into war.
So yes, I think it is well past time to let Dianne Feinstein have the retirement that she deserves and get someone else, perhaps a Katie Porter, in there to push California forward and actually get some more progressive legislation passed. Maybe we can repeal the filibuster, that sort of thing.
And in a much better segue than my podcast partner can make, Elon Musk is an idiot. Do you like that segue?
He is an idiot.
And I'm going to tell you why. We talked about this entire episode's going to be about the Super Bowl. One way, shape, or form. This whole thing's going to be about the Super Bowl. Did you hear about what happened with Elon Musk on Super Bowl Sunday?
Can I pretend I didn't?
No. For those of you who don't know, unlike Jason, something very special happened with Elon Musk. He tweeted out, I'm not kidding, this is going to be the entire story. He tweeted out, "Fly Eagles fly," a very pro-Eagles Super Bowl tweet. And it hit around...
He seems like an Eagle fan.
Sure, whatever, right? And it hit around 9 or so million impressions or views. About 9 million people saw it.
Which you can now see with Twitter, because he wanted to add that feature.
Because he wanted himself to look good. Whatever. The same day, Joe Biden also tweeted saying that he can't actually support a team because he's the president, but his wife supports the Eagles and he supports his wife. Cool, whatever. Good job, Vanilla Joe. That tweet got about 20 million impressions. Now, if you can tell by math...
More than Lord Elon.
More than Lord Elon. Okay, whatever, fine, right? It doesn't matter. It's a tweet. Who cares? Apparently, Elon Musk freaking cares because he was so angry that he did not get as much visibility that Joe Biden, that he deleted the tweet in a rage and then afterwards flew to San Francisco and declared an emergency meeting with engineers to fix his visibility problem, where they stepped all throughout the night. There are Slack messages that are shown in the Verge article that we'll post.
So these are the engineers that are still left there, most of which are only there because they're dependent on the job to not get deported.
No kidding. Where they stayed till 2 to 5 in the morning doing this emergency override of Elon Musk's Twitter account visibility score, where they put a bunch of restrictions off and they increased them by 1,000 and boosted his tweets. Now, what's crazy about this, Jason, is that I didn't know about this all week. I actually just learned about this today. And I check Twitter semi-regularly. I'm not a big Twitter user. I'm actually addicted to Facebook, not Twitter. But whenever I would go on Twitter...
Okay, boomer.
Shut up. But whenever I would go on Twitter, I kept seeing Elon Musk's tweets. Usually one of the first tweets I would see on my Twitter feed. And I'd be like, why? I don't follow Elon Musk. Why do I keep seeing Elon Musk tweets? And now I realize that it wasn't a coincidence at all. It was actually just because Elon was a big baby and got his fifis hurt that he had to completely alter Twitter's algorithm just to make it so he could be seen more often. And I even checked it today and I saw as one of my first tweets, I have a picture of it, of Elon Musk tweeting about how it's false that his tweets are being boosted. This is insane. And okay, now yes, this could be a note nothing story. I think that's perfectly fine. No one cares about whether or not people see Elon Musk's tweets more often. Who gives a rip, right? But I do think there is a legitimate concern here where if Elon will change Twitter's algorithm for visibility that quickly on something so vain as he wants to see more impressions than Joe Biden does on a Super Bowl tweet, imagine what's going to happen when some big conspiracy goes around or when the next presidential election happens.
Mm-hmm.
So while it's Elon Musk's Super Bowl tweet now, it could be whatever Hunter Biden's laptop Series 5.4. Who knows, right? And that kind of legitimately scares me.
Well, I'll tell you this. Maybe this will help. Nobody really cares about Twitter.
I will say that is the good thing, right? It's the problem with that, though, is while there isn't a huge user base with Twitter, a lot of the influential people and journalists journalists use Twitter. And that's where you're going to get a lot of news stories trickling in from conspiracist areas because of nonsense like this, because you have journalists who are addicted to Twitter because of their job. And that's what concerns me. But I agree with you that overall, this won't do much to the general public outside of that.
M&Ms will not be satisfied until every last cartoon character is deeply unappealing and totally androgynous. Until the moment you wouldn't want to have a drink with any one of them. That's the goal. When you're totally turned off, they've won.
Boy ain't right.
Continuing on in our Super Bowl coverage, we need to talk more.
Our hard-hitting Super Bowl coverage.
Exactly. More about the conservative reactions to everything. Because did you know, Jason, atrocities happened at the Super Bowl?
I figured for sure it was going to be the halftime show, right? That's what it is every year. Conservatives freak out about the halftime show, and this year it was Rihanna, and she was pregnant during it. I thought, I'm going to find all these crazy reactionary takes on Rihanna in the halftime show.
And keep in mind, I did see some. So
they do exist.
There weren't none, but there was way more outrage over something else.
And I missed this because I didn't watch all the...
Because you're a racist.
Because I didn't watch all of the beginning, because I don't want to watch the
National Anthem.
I don't care about any of that. Like, I don't want to watch that garbage.
Chris Stapleton?
I didn't know it was Chris Stapleton, but if I did, I would have definitely not watched it. But no, I don't want to see all the pregame stuff and all like the dumb intros that they do. So I didn't tune in until it was like just about kickoff, or at least I was hoping it was just about kickoff. So I missed all of this. I did not see, I saw all of the articles after the fact, but I had no idea at the time that this had happened.
So what are we talking about? We are talking about someone performing, and I forget the name, and I apologize because they're actually a very noble singer, and I just don't know any celebrities.
I certainly don't know singers. That is not my area of expertise.
But it was the performance of the song Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Yeah, they had 3 different songs before. They had the national anthem, obviously was last, but they had America the Beautiful.
Yep.
They had the Lift Every Voice and Sing, and the national anthem. 3 different performances, 3 songs. What could possibly be offensive?
And well, okay, for full context, there is a colloquial knowing that the Lift Every Voice song is somewhat considered the black national anthem.
Football is a predominantly black sport.
Right.
Perfectly acceptable. Wonderful. They should do it all the time. It should replace the national anthem.
Yeah, I mean, it's much more like equality based than the national anthem.
Right. The national anthem, which...
Although it is a Christian hymn, so let's talk about that. Like, I mean, I guess it's then just as godly as it was before.
Right. Well, then the national anthem was, written when black people were considered property instead of people. So there's that. I could see not really embracing the national anthem so much due to that.
Well, let's talk about some of the people who lost their minds over this. We're going to start with Daily Wire's Michael Knowles. He says, and I quote, "But now the libs are saying there are 2 national anthems, one for black people and one for white. Which one do the Hispanics and the Asians and the other people? I don't know which one they get to sing. Maybe they'll get their own. But if there are 2 national anthems, that means there are 2 nations. 2 competing nations."
That's what it means.
Are they going to be geographically distinct nations? What?
Yeah. What?
Is what the libs saying here is that black... Shut up, don't interrupt me. Is what the libs saying here is that black people need one part of the country and white people need another part of the country? No, that's what conservatives have been saying.
Right. They've been chanting race war for the last 5 years, 6 years?
Or is it going to be 2 nations fighting over the same geographical land? Is it the libs calling for a race war?
This is our land. We killed the Native Americans. We did that. Is it the libs calling for a race war? Those are the only options.
We also have Ben Shapiro giving his thoughts on the whole thing, except not just on the national anthem, but also on the flyover, because he sucks.
The so-called Black National Anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. They started doing this, again, in the aftermath of Colin Kaepernick's protest as an attempt to sop the left on racial issues. And they're still doing this before the Super Bowl now. And it's called the Black National Anthem for a reason for a lot of people. But people in the media are like, why are you calling it the Black National Anthem? Why are you making a big deal? Why are you doing it at all? It turns out we have a national anthem in this country, and it's called the Star-Spangled Banner, and we all share it. And there are a bunch of other songs that are not racially motivated or racially divisive or in any way sectarian. Nothing wrong with the song. It's a fine song. The question is there a Latino American national anthem? Or a Jewish American national anthem? Or a Polish American national anthem that has to be sung before the Super Bowl as well? All of the Polish Americans playing in the Super Bowl. Or is it only the Black National Anthem that gets sung before the Super Bowl? I'm just wondering. Again, the Super Bowl is supposed to be a grand unifying cultural event. Is it? Is it supposed to be a grand unifying cultural event, Ben? I don't think so. Why, you have a woke sectarian lead up to the event. So now, because it's known as the Black National Anthem, it's a woke sectarian. It's a religious song.
Oh my God.
And I'm stopping the chipmunky. I can't keep it up. I don't know if you can even understand it. Just speed up the playback speed if you want, and that'll work. As he continues. Okay, well, other kind of woke elements, which is not a sentence. So, very often at the Super Bowl, you will have a Blue Angels flyover, right?
Yeah.
You'll have 4 military aircraft that fly over the stadium.
Because why the hell not?
It's just advertising for the military.
Literally is.
And here, you had military aircraft fly over the stadium during the national anthem. The military aircraft were all flown by females.
Jesus Christ. Why you call them females?
Yeah, men who refer to women as females always creeps. Now, I don't know how you categorize a female now, according to the U.S. military under Joe Biden.
Jesus Christ, Ben. Come on.
It's trying to get into that Candace Owens territory.
Oh, my God.
Perhaps some of them were biological males. We don't know.
We knew who they were. What are you saying? Oh, Ben. Oh.
He's just fixated on their genitals. It seems kind of cisgender and cisnormative. You just said you don't know. If these were all biological females, I would hope that at least one of them was a man who identifies as a female.
What?
So is he saying a trans woman is a woman now? Is that what he's saying?
What is happening? What is this line of logic? My brain.
That seems like the only real way to do this. What? But they flew. Listen, all of these women are doing a lot more for the country than I am. Okay, glad you
at least acknowledging that.
Acknowledge that. They're serving in the military. That's great, because he realized he just insulted military members. The point is that the military, in conjunction with the NFL, decided that it was very important, symbolically speaking, to have only women fly over the stadium, which, again, is a way of trying to virtue signal to the left-wing social crowd. Yeah, you guys might not like the military very much, but they are females who are flying those planes, and that's the really, really important thing.
Stop calling them females, Ben. Oh!
And to cap it off,
oh no,
there is something weirdly metaphorical about them flying over a closed stadium, which, is it closed? It's got a big hole in it. Because State Farm Arena, which is in Arizona, apparently the roof was on because it's very hot outside. And so you have, I guess, the glass ceiling there for the ladies.
So they flew above the glass ceiling?
I don't know. That was just a tortured way to try to bring that into it.
What?
But yeah, I don't even know what he was trying to say.
I don't know either.
Yeah. It's all just virtue signaling because they had women. They should have had all men like they always do.
Hey, you watch your mouth. They are females, man.
Females.
They are females.
The female species.
Biological.
I feel
females.
so bad for Ben Shapiro's wife.
Oh my God.
I mean, I know it pays well, but oh God. You must be so unhappy.
No kidding. And he has kids. He has kids, man.
And we will finish off the cavalcade of right-wing hatred towards someone singing a song which is important for a specific group of people.
Yeah, don't you love that these are all white men that we're talking about right now, too?
Yes. So we go away from the Daily Wire to Newsmax and Benny Johnson.
Dude, if you're a grown adult and your name's Benny, we
Benny. Sports is woke culture, and it's really repugnant to me.
Just sports in general.
Yep. And so I don't follow sports super closely. What? A right-wing conservative talk show host saying he doesn't follow sports?
Because just sports in general is woke.
They lose like half his audience right there?
What?
I don't know.
I love that. It's literally just, it's sports is woke culture.
That being said, I do watch the Super Bowl for cultural moments.
Cultural moment?
Yeah, well, like
What?
he subscribes to Ben Shapiro's, like it's this grand unifying cultural experience.
He's a serial killer. Who watches the Super Bowl for cultural moments? Are you kidding?
I think he means the commercials. That's the only thing. Like I don't like football, but I'll just watch the commercials. He's basically the my wife of right-wing conservative.
Well, no, at least your wife says you watches for the commercials, like an honest person. Oh my God.
He watches for cultural moments like the Black National Anthem being sung. How the hell is this even a thing? What a repugnant, degenerate thing to do.
Wow. Bring up the Nazi talk.
To split up a national anthem by race. Not like Francis Scott Key. When he sang it for everyone. That is antithetical, of course, to America. It should, quite frankly, be illegal.
Oh my God.
Free speech warrior. The government should make sure that they can't sing their song before the national anthem. You shouldn't be able to do that. Is there a white national anthem?
Yeah, it's called
Yes, there is.
It's called the Star-Spangled Banner, you moron.
Oh, I'm not sure anyone would be very happy with that being sung. I'm usually not.
Oh.
Carrie Lake was in the event last night in the stadium. She refused to stand for the Black National Anthem. Good for her.
Oh, wait, you took my... I wasn't even reading it. Dang it.
Nobody should stand for the Black National. There shouldn't be a Black National Anthem. Because America is a country that is founded upon all of us being created equal.
What is going on?
Other than the slaves that we had, regardless of the melanin amount in your skin or where your ancestors were raised.
I love the fact that he had to stop himself.
Like, he actually believes that?
I love nobody should stand for the black. That's really racist.
I should stop.
I should stop. And that was too racist for a Newsmax, man.
In his own mind, he's self-censored. He's like, wait, I'm about to say the N-word. So this guy has convinced himself that the little kitty storybook version of America's founding that they want taught in every school in the country is real. Like, it really happened. We were for equality from the very beginning. The Star-Spangled Banner was a anthem about everyone being equal and us all sharing a country together, and we didn't genocide anyone to get it, and we didn't build it on the backs of slaves and indentured servants.
Hey,
nope.
I was taught the Pilgrims had a great Thanksgiving dinner with the Native Americans, and that is the history I choose to believe in. Oh my God.
Speaking of history.
Oh, we're so racist. This whole country is so racist.
Let's go to our main subject of today, the Wilmington Coup / race massacre of 1898.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? It's hard to get any word in with this clown.
So, Jason, this was your choice for this topic. I gotta be honest, man. I did not know about this until you brought it up.
Which is why it was my choice, as again, we are continuing Black History Month with another chapter of American history, Black history, however you want to think about it, that is not very well known, but is very important, and is something that, if conservatives had their way, would forever be buried, and you would never hear about.
So today we're going to talk about the Wilmington Coup of 1898, also known as the Wilmington Race Massacre.
It was the only successful coup in American history.
So let's talk about the background. This takes place in Wilmington, North Carolina, and at the time, Wilmington was the state's largest city. It was a majority black city since the 1870s, with a fast-growing black population. In 1890, the white population was around 8,700 people, with the black population being around 11,000 or 11,200, 300. It was considered a symbol for black hope because of the booming black community. Many black residents own shops and businesses. If you guys remember our last week's episode on the Tulsa Race Massacre, very similar to that. Black male residents tend to actually have a higher literacy rate than white residents. And black residents tend to participate in politics way more often than in other North Carolina towns, with several holding municipal and political offices.
So not only did they have the financial, commercial success that we saw in Tulsa, they're starting to get real political power as well.
Right. A few key people you should probably be aware of. You have the governor, who was a Republican at the time, Daniel Russell. You had Furnifold Simmons, the Democrat. And then you had Marianne Butler, the senator, who was a part of the Populist Party. Now, if you guys don't know about this, which if we didn't cover this already, we should really do an episode about this. This was before the political party switch. So Democrats at the time were the conservative, racist party, and Republicans were the more progressive, more diverse party.
Oh, hold on. You can't talk about what their viewpoints were. You just have to say the Democrats are the racists and the Republicans are the equal rights party.
Yeah.
You can't talk about the fact that the Republicans were also the liberals or the progressives and that the Democrats were the conservatives, the right-wing party. You can't mention that part of it. You just have to say the names.
Hey, the party of Lincoln, man. You can think of the populists as the never Democrats, just like we have the never Trumpers today. They were definitely more conservative or more libertarian, I guess you could say, but they thought the Democrat Party was way too crazy and racist for their means.
They're generally like poor white farmers.
Yeah. So in North Carolina, Republicans were able to build a coalition of Republican and populist voters to defeat Democrats for nearly a decade. And because of this, they had a lot more political power to try to create a more egalitarian, progressive law, simply put. Simmons, the Democrat, hated this and had an entire plan to gain control of the state's legislature.
As well as pretty much all of the powerful white men were all kind of against blacks having any kind of power.
Shocking, right?
Yeah, that doesn't happen today.
His campaign strategy focused on three different elements. Men who could write, which consisted of journalists and newspaper owners that would constantly berate with pro-democratic and white supremacist messages. There was one example that I have here. I don't know if you saw it, Jason.
I have seen this.
It's pretty crazy. It's called "The Vampire That Hovers Over North Carolina," in parentheses, Negro Rule.
That was a word that was being used everywhere at that time. I've seen like a dozen political cartoons that all use that term, Negro Rule.
Yes.
Because they have black people in political power. White people are being ruled over by the Negro, and it's unacceptable.
Right. So, and it's an absolutely horrific, racist political cartoon. And basically, it was just a propaganda arm of Simmons' campaign plan.
And also had one of the vampire hands grasping for white women, too.
Yep.
They
And
constantly
children.
do that. They're gonna rape you.
Yep. The second prong was men who could speak. Those were the people who would travel and give pro-dem, pro-white supremacy stump speeches. One of those was Alfred Moore Waddell. Is it Waddell or Waddle?
Who cares? He's dead now.
Good point. I'm going to go with Waddell. On November 7th, 1898, the day before the election, he said during a speech, quote, "You are Anglo-Saxons. You are armed and prepared, and you will do your duty. Be ready at a moment's notice. Go to the polls tomorrow, and if you find a Negro out voting, tell him to leave the polls, and if he refuses, kill. Shoot him down in his tracks. We shall win tomorrow if we have to do it with guns."
Wow. I'm glad we don't have things like that happening today.
No kidding. And this was an entire hate-filled campaign to literally try to scare people away from the polls to not vote. Finally, you had men who could ride. And these were the people that people like Waddell were talking to. They were red shirts, which are white supremacist terrorist groups, and the White Government Union, which is a collection of white supremacist clubs, who all went out and actually did the scaring away like Waddell asked for. Now, one more piece of background information that you have to know about, and one hopefully last name is really important, is a person named Alex Manly.
And boy, was he. Go look at some pictures.
Oh my God. Mustache and everything.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, very nice.
He was the black editor of the Wilmington Record, the city's only African-American newspaper at the time. In August of 1898, Manly published a response to a racist speech, and oh boy, was it racist, which was reprinted in the Wilmington Morning Star, a white newspaper in the area, by a Georgia congressman's wife and former slave owner, where she said she supported lynching of black men who had, quote, inappropriate relationships with white women.
And we're not giving you her name because
She sucks.
you don't need to know it.
Yeah, she's a terrible person. Screw her.
Also dead. Forget her.
Yep, exactly.
We have a quote from the nameless racist.
Karen. Let's call her Karen because she's a terrible person. Her name's actually Karen.
So in her speech, Karen says, if it needs lynching to protect women's dearest possession, she means their vaginas, from the ravening human beasts.
Oh my God.
Then I say lynch 1,000 a week if necessary.
And that speech was printed and distributed out across the country at the time. So Manley posted a response in his newspaper. The response increased racial tensions, and Democrats like Waddell used it to their advantage.
I believe the part that really incensed them was him basically saying any interracial couples that you are seeing are not rape.
Nope.
That this is consensual, that white women seek out black men and are very satisfied with their company.
Well, and he also accused white men of actually doing most of the raping.
Which is still statistically true.
Yeah.
Has not changed at all since then. And yes, this was reprinted everywhere. And this, not what the racist woman said, that they should lynch 1,000 black men a week, but this response
Yes.
was put in every paper as like literally the most sensational thing that's ever been printed.
Yep. So just like the Tulsa Race Massacre, where a very stupid, innocuous thing started an entire riot of crazy white men, it's kind of the same thing here too. So election day happens. The Democratic Party won every single race they had a candidate in. And Trump's going to love this. There was massive fraud by the Democrats.
The Democratic Party committed massive voter fraud and stole an election.
Quite literally. The red shirts who ran elections actually just straight up overturned ballot counts at their own whim. And election officials stuffed ballot boxes for Dem candidates. So like literal ballot stuffing.
And they literally turned black voters away at gunpoint.
Yes.
Which is, I think, going to be in the next platform for the Republican Party.
Just turning black people away.
You might see what's coming up right now, in fact.
No kidding. After the Democrats won, they drafted a set of demands which were then named the White Declaration of Independence.
Because the first one wasn't white enough.
Oh my God. And I just want to read these demands to you. There were 8 demands in total. Number 1, that the time has passed for the intelligent citizens of this community owning 95% of the property and paying taxes in like proportion to be ruled by Negroes. Number 2, that we will not tolerate the action of unscrupulous white men in affiliating with the Negroes, so that by means of their votes, they can dominate the intelligent and thrifty element in the community, thus causing business to stagnate and progress to be out of the question.
Yeah, because the poor white farmers formed a coalition with the black Republicans, because equality actually benefited them both, we can never allow that to happen again.
No. So far we have no more black people ever getting political office and leading the area again. And we have not tolerating any white people who affiliates with those black people ever again. Number 3, that the Negro has demonstrated by antagonizing our interest in every way, and especially by his ballot, that he is incapable of realizing that his interests are and should be identical with those of the community. Basically saying black people shouldn't vote because they're not smart enough to.
Right. And they
don't
really,
know what's good for them.
They should vote for us.
Right.
And they just don't realize it because they're too dumb.
Now, that's the Republican message. Number 4, that the progressive element in any community is the white population, and that the giving of nearly all of the employment to Negro laborers has been against the best interests of this county and city, and is sufficient reason why the city of Wilmington, with its natural advantages, has not become a city of at least 50,000 inhabitants.
The reason why Wilmington is not larger is because we let all of the black people have all of the labor jobs.
And keep in mind, remember, Wilmington is the largest city in the state right now, and they're upset it's not bigger. Number 5, that we propose in the future to give the white men a large part of the employment heretofore given to Negroes, because we realize that white families cannot thrive here unless there are more opportunities for the different members of said family.
White affirmative action.
I was gonna say, they taking our jobs.
They've had it too good.
Number 6, that the white men expect to live in this community peaceably, to have and provide absolute protection for their families, who shall be safe from insult for all persons whomsoever. We are prepared to treat the Negroes with justice and consideration. in all matters which do not involve sacrifices of the interest of the intelligent, and he says intelligent way too much in this stupid thing, and progressive portion of the community. But we are equally prepared now and immediately to enforce what we know to be our rights.
As long as they don't get in our way.
Oh my God. We'll let them live.
Right.
And again, this goes back
They can't have any jobs or be in office.
or be near us in any way, shape, or form, but we'll let them live. And again, this goes back to what you're saying, where there was this huge amount of panic over black people just supposedly raping women everywhere, which wasn't true. Number 7, we're almost there, guys, that we have been in our desire for harmony and peace blinded to our best interests and our rights. A climax was reached when the Negro...
I guess.
A climax was reached when the Negro paper of the city published an article so vile. Remember, this is in the Declaration of White Independence, apparently, and it's a feud so vile and slanderous that it would, in most communities, have resulted in the lynching of the editor.
Free speech.
We deprecate lynching, and yet there is no punishment provided by the laws adequate for this offense. We therefore owe it to the people of this community and in this city as a protection against such license in the future that the paper known as The Record cease to be published and that its editor be banished from this community. So, a literal feud. This
it's
is
singling
legal,
out this
This
one.
is a legal document. It's one dude. It goes on saying, we demand that he leaves the city within 24 hours after the issuance of this proclamation. Second, that the printing press from which the record has been issued be packed and shipped from the city without delay. That we be notified within 12 hours of the acceptance. Blah, I don't care enough. This is already boring. It's basically saying, get this guy out here. And last but not least, number 8, it is the sense of this meeting that Mayor S.P. Wright and Chief of Police J.R. Milne, by the way, both are black, have demonstrated their utter incapacity to give the city a decent government and keep order therein. Their continuance in office, being a constant menace to the peace of this community, ought forthwith to resign. So now officially calling for the mayor and the chief of police to resign.
The democratically elected mayor and chief of police in a city in the United States of America.
Yep. Soon after, the Committee of Colored Citizens was established. It consisted of 25 white people and 32 black people, mostly known leaders throughout the community. You want to guess who was appointed to be the chair of that committee? None other than our favorite white supremacist, Alfred Moore Waddell. Waddell made the demands from the Declaration of White Independence, or whatever it was called, I don't care, stupid stuff, known to the black members of the committee, and he demanded a response by 7:30 a.m. the next day. The 32 black members then met at a barbershop to draft a response, and it said, Dear Sir, we the colored citizens to whom was referred the matter of expulsion from the city of the persons and press of A.M. Manley, the publisher, beg most respectfully to say that we are in no wise responsible for nor in any way endorse the obnoxious article that called forth your activities. Boo! Neither we are authorized to act for him in this matter, but in the interest of peace we will most willingly use our influence to have your wishes carried out. Very respectfully, the Community of Colored Citizens. In fact, most of them already knew that Manley fled the city. However, they could not deliver it by hand because Waddell's house was actually heavily guarded by armed white patrols that were planning on shooting any black people who were out that night. So instead, they dropped off at the post office. We're going to fast forward to November 10th, 1898, so 2 days afterwards. Obviously, the letter did not reach Waddell in time. Waddell gathered a crowd of approximately 500 white men at the Light Infantry Armory to anticipate the response from the Committee of Colored Citizens. Author of the Pulitzer Prize-winning book, Wilmington's Lie, David Zucchino, I believe his name is, believes that Waddell knew the letter was out, but that he hid that from the crowd. So, awesome. He's a liar, too. The mob demanded that the infantry's commander, Lieutenant Colonel Walker Taylor, an avowed white supremacist, lead them to Manley's daily record, but he refused since the infantry was still part of the federal service. Instead, Taylor telegraphed the capital saying, quote, situation here serious. Waddell then led the crowd across the city through a black neighborhood known as Brooklyn. That's an important thing because we're going to keep talking about Brooklyn, and we're not talking about the city of Brooklyn, so as a heads up. To Manley's press building, where it grew near to 2,000 people. They then proceeded to break into the building, destroy the printing press, and burn the building to the ground.
Freedom of the press.
Of course. Afterward, the mob happily posed with a photo with a newspaper photographer in front of the building they just destroyed. You can find pictures online, and they look adorable.
And they probably made them into postcards. It was like a big thing when we talked about the Tulsa Massacre last week. That was a lot of the photographs that survived from that time were basically like white supremacist postcards that were sent out across the country, depicting this as like a joyous event when they ran the black people out of town.
Right. Fortunately, Manley did leave well before this, and actually because he was tipped off about the mob that was going to happen to him within a couple of days anyway. So we actually haven't heard from him anywhere besides the story, and he hopefully lived a happy life somewhere else.
But But his business was destroyed. As you said, the building was burnt down, the press was destroyed, so no more black newspaper in this town. It was one of the very few daily black newspapers in the country.
Yep.
And once again, black people build businesses despite all of this racism and all the oppression, and white people get angry about it and destroy it, burn it to the ground, loot it, destroy it. But it's the black people who are the angry animals. We are the superior ones.
Continuing on, according to a letter by a witness, quote, all hell broke loose at around 11 a.m. Members of the mob boarded streetcars and rode around town, firing their guns as they passed through black neighborhoods. Walkouts and confrontations with black workers began all around the city. One particular confrontation turned quickly violent, leading to several black people being shot and killed. A few white men were also shot, but, well, they survived. Unfortunately. Governor Russell then sent a telegram back to Taylor, ordering him to, quote, preserve the peace. Except Taylor is a committed white supremacist, so not a good move. He ordered his men to, quote, shoot to kill, and turned them against black citizens all throughout the city. As soon as the militia entered Brooklyn, they shot a group of black residents they presumed to be a threat, killing nearly 25 people. They held up black churches while searching for weapons, even though there weren't any, and then they held up a local dance hall where they shot a man trying to flee. And of course, there is evidence that the militia, who was supposed to be preserving the peace, stood idly by and did nothing while directly witnessing white people in the militia murder innocent black residents.
Because it's a systemic problem. It's not individuals. This is a government-sanctioned takeover of this town.
Well, and confusion was so bad and chaotic, you couldn't even tell the militia from the actual infantry. There was no distinction anymore because everyone was just...
probably really was no distinction.
No, there wasn't, because everyone was just mowing them down. They're all just the same people, just based with different weapons they had. Later that afternoon, around 4 p.m., Waddell and others commanded Wilmington's mayor, police chief, and aldermen to report to Thalian Hall. The building was quickly overrun by rioters. Waddell demanded they all resigned, and they did. Each alderperson resigned one by one so that the board could immediately vote to replace him with a new white supremacist alderperson. Waddell was then elected mayor by the new city board. Soon after, all black employees were fired and replaced. Two of these new alders were tasked with overseeing the 50 banishments of prominent black community leaders, including the mayor, police chief, and clergy. These men were told that returning would result in physical harm and or death. Black residents then left in droves, being forced to camp outside in nearby forests and swamps, and some did come back, but only to get their belongings before quickly leaving for good.
That is literally a successful coup of a city in the United States, and nothing was ever done about it.
No, and actually we'll talk about the aftermath of that right now, because after the massacre, 25 black casualties were reported. However, it is strongly suspected that up to hundreds were actually killed. Wilmington became a majority white city in 1900.
And remember what we talked about at the very beginning.
They were 2/3 black when we started this conversation. In 2 years since the coup started in 1898, they turned a 2/3 black city into a predominantly white city.
By force. And it was just allowed to happen.
Even more so, that same year, Democrats won the governor's office as well and passed the suffrage amendment of 1900, virtually eliminating voting rights for black residents and increased strict segregation in communities until the 1950s.
They instituted poll taxes. They basically made it very difficult for black voters to register and to vote. The grandfather clauses, like you can only vote if your grandfather could vote. And because the black residents, their grandparents were slaves and could not vote, they were legally disenfranchised.
And even worse, this whole thing was covered up. White writers and newspapers immediately tried to downplay and reframe the massacre. The Wilmington Morning Star, another white paper, published the headline, quote, bloody conflict with Negroes. White men forced to take up arms for preservation of law and order. Underneath, it said blacks provoke trouble.
So just like the Tulsa massacre, everything was blamed on the black community, even though they were the victims.
They went on to also say it was simply the unanimous uprising of the white people. Waddell also went on and said, quote, the good old Anglo-Saxon way of waiting until government becomes intolerable and then openly and manfully overthrowing it is for the best. Several black writers tried to write down what actually happened to preserve the history as correctly happening, but unfortunately, it was the book The Leopard Spots, which was a racist fictionalization by Thomas Dixon Jr., also known for basing the story of Birth of the Nation.
Woodrow Wilson's favorite movie.
So, awesome. And even up until today, people don't know about this entire massacre because it was whitewashed all throughout our history.
And it's still going on today. We're still trying to cover cover up that these stories are part of our history. These are part of our country. It can't be something that you can just deny. But we still see so many laws. Ron DeSantis is literally running on a platform of erasing history.
Well, and what's even worse, it wasn't even until 1951 that actual history about this was published. 1951. This happened in 1898.
And it's something, again, I never heard of growing up. I heard about this after the Tulsa Massacre story kind of got popular following the Watchmen episode that we were talking about. And it was kind of in vogue to be like, here's more stories that you probably never heard of that are terrible. And that's how I first heard about this.
And we'll include multiple resources that you can go check out on your own. There are several books. There is Wilmington's Lie by Zucchino that we referenced already. There's also several other books. A Day of Blood, the 1898 Wilmington Race Riot. Democracy Betrayed, the Wilmington Race Riot of 1898 and its legacy. There's also a very, very good New Yorker article called What a White Supremacist Coup Looks Like that we'll all include in the show notes. And finally, I gotta give some credit here because the University of North Carolina, Wilmington has a great database for all of this stuff, all based on the Wilmington Coup. They have tons of old newspapers that are all digitally scanned that you can view for yourself firsthand. They have published works and dissertations on the subject. They have manuscripts. They have journal articles, anything you can think of, all in one place. I'll include that in the show notes as well. And it's a very good resource to fall down a rabbit hole with and learn so much about this event you probably never heard of.
Because it's uncomfortable. It makes white people feel bad. So we can't learn it.
Which we should. We should feel bad as white people for this.
And
absolutely.
Again, reparations. Is this enough for reparations?
Well, and again, I don't know what else you need
just
because
literally keep destroying everything that black people are building post-slavery. Why can't you guys move to a better part of town? I don't understand. How come you don't have the same generational wealth that my family has? What's wrong with you guys?
Absolutely atrocious. I'll let you finish it out.
Fuck white people.
Oh my God.
Kill whitey.
Thank you for listening. We hope to see you in the next episode. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter at ThinkProPod. You can email us at thinkpropod@gmail.com. And remember, when in doubt, think progressively.
I know what you're going to talk about, if that helps you.
God, it's all my fault. I'm trying to banter. I'm not doing a good job. I'm not giving you good setup lines. My segues are just garbage. Everything, the walls are crumbling down. Just get ChatGPT to replace me, all right? That's what we need. We need ChatGPT.
Chat Joe PT.
Oh my God. Probably a much better podcast host too while we're at it. You can cut all of this.
So far, I have a lot of editing
really
work
sorry.
to do.
I'm trying to get through all this and I'm just having a bad time.